Okay, it's been a great day, and I have the pleasure of introducing our last keynote speaker. What did you guys think of the last panel? Yeah, I was taking some notes. I got things I got to think about. There's a bunch of questions that were being asked that I think all of us at some point in time in our life need to answer. So I appreciate the panelists for challenging us in that way. And we have another speaker that I'm sure is going to challenge us in some way as well. So I have the great pleasure of introducing Maya Watson. And Ms. Watson has a fantastic, just really interesting background. I won't be able to do it service in the brief amount of time, but she currently is the head of global marketing at Clubhouse, leading the creator partnerships, community editorial, and communication teams for all their marketing initiatives. And if you don't know what Clubhouse is, go on. It's a social app that I think is a really unique space that allows you to really have conversations with really interesting individuals globally. And I think it's a pretty innovative type of organization. Prior to that, she also worked for a pretty innovative organization. She was an executive at Netflix, leading their editorial and publishing. She also was a longtime executive at OWN Networks. Yes, that is the Harpo Productions, Oprah Winfrey. Originally from Minneapolis, so I'm from Chicago. We don't go to Minneapolis because it's too cold, and we're from Chicago. So I know this. She's a pretty tough person. Has a BS in marketing and advertising from Indiana University and a master's degree in integrated marketing and communications from Northwestern University. I'm going to step down, and I'm going to give the floor to Maya. And thank you very much for taking the time to come speak with us today. We look forward to the words you bring.
Thank you. I know it's the end of the day, so I hope that this is entertaining for everybody. I'm a little nervous because it's been a long time since I've been on stage somewhere. And so last night, I was at the reception and people were asking me, what are you going to talk about? And I didn't know at the time because I'm a last-minute procrastinator. It has served me well in most cases. And we had a prep call this week with Kevin and Christina, who've done a fantastic job organizing everything. It's such incredible energy here. And I said, well, what do you guys want me to talk about? Because I could talk about a lot of different things. And Christina said, just imagine that there might be some students or people who look at your career, what you've accomplished, what advice would you give them? And so last night, before I went to bed, I was like, okay, I'm gonna say a prayer. God, tell me what to say. And this morning, this was the Bible verse that popped up on my phone, which is about time. And this is Psalms 90:12. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And recently, I just read a book, changed my life. Does anybody have any guesses around what 4,000 might represent? Any guesses? No, almost. This book is called 4,000 Weeks, and the average person lives 4,000 weeks. The average person lives 76 years, and for whatever reason, when you put it into weeks, it doesn't sound like that much time. It freaked me out because I was like, 4,000 weeks is it? That's all we get. And so, of course, the natural thing that you do is you do some math. So I took my age and multiplied it by 52, and I have been alive 1,908 weeks, which is also the year that the first and the finest sorority was established. I don't know if there's any AKAs in here, but okay. And I have 2,092 weeks left, approximately. So I don't recommend you do this exercise if you're not ready to deal with this reality. I did this with my daughter, and she was like, oh, I've been alive 800 weeks, because she's 16 or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm halfway. And for some people, they get more weeks, and for some people, they get less weeks. You don't know how many weeks you have. And so instead of giving advice, because I've been really fortunate to have so many incredible experiences, and I really feel so grateful because I've had an unbelievable life. The things that stay with me are the questions that people have asked me along the way that have helped kind of guide me down the path and how I spend my time. And so I'm just gonna take you on a journey of how my weeks have gone so far. And so the first question is, who is worth your time? As I've been doing, like, conscious of this construct of time, I'm like, do I want to spend time with you this week? You know, because it's like, I don't have very many weeks left. So, you know, I'm very thoughtful about that. And the first people that I spent time with are my parents. I am the daughter of Ida and Perry Watson. My mom, they're both Michiganders. My mom is from Detroit. My dad is from Muskegon Heights. My dad is one of 9. My mom is one of 7. They both came from very, very poor backgrounds, and they're the only 2 in their family that really made it out. They were corporate executives. My mom was in sales at IBM. My dad was in sales at Xerox. And they had 4 kids. So I have 3 older brothers. I am the youngest and the most rebellious. And we cultivated such a strong dynamic as a family. If you know the Watsons, you know this is us. We love to laugh. We ride or die for each other, and it is family over everything. You know, my parents, when they were in corporate America, decided that they wanted to create a better life for us. And I think somebody said last night at the reception that your propensity to be an entrepreneur depends if your parents were entrepreneurs. And so my parents took the leap and left corporate America, and they sat us down and said, listen, so we're getting off the ride, and we're gonna start our own business. My dad got into this program. It was a car dealership program that Daimler Chrysler started, I think, back in the 80s, to build a pipeline for Black and brown people to own car dealerships. And in order to do so, he had to go back to school. My mom had to step out of work. And they said, we're moving from our, nice home in the suburbs to a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. And so there were 6 of us living in that apartment. And I think we all went kicking and screaming, not really understanding why do we have to do this, and Christmas wasn't as good as it used to be, and don't even dare ask for any Jordans or Fruit Loops from the aisle. We got the bag of cereal at the bottom. But we were in that apartment, and it was some of the fondest memories I've ever had. It's what I remember from my childhood of just all of us sitting around the table. I learned how to play bid whist and spades. We would order Chinese food and watch TV, and we would talk a lot about it as a family, and my dad was explaining all the things that he was doing to create a better life for us. And so the first question that I remember is, what are you willing to sacrifice for your dream? Because we all have some grand ambition for our life. I don't think anybody comes on earth wanting to just play it safe or play it cool. But it takes work and it takes sacrifice. And, I think we were in that apartment for 5 years. It was very awkward being in a room with my brothers during their adolescent period, but whatever. And then they graduated, and my dad owned his own car dealership, and today he's got multiple businesses, and they are thriving entrepreneurs, and been such a journey that was incredible. And so then when I was in high school, I was rebellious, like I said. I was equal parts academic, equal parts party. I was captain of the soccer team, captain of the basketball team, managing editor of the newspaper, and I also raged at night and broke curfew and didn't follow any rules because I was like, I'm not gonna be like my brothers, who were very, very well-mannered and kind of followed the path. And so my parents said, where do you wanna go to college? And I said, I don't know yet. I don't know where I want to go. I really wanted to go to Howard, but my brother was there, and I was like, I'm not going to college with him. But they said, we're going to support you. You can go anywhere you want to go. So I said, University of Miami, Florida. And they said, no, we didn't mean anywhere. I said, no. You said anywhere. And so I went to South Beach. I took my talents to South Beach. And you get the reference, okay. And so I was living a Miami life. I got to campus and forgot what I was there for. I was on academic probation. I was partying every night, out in the club, having a great time. And at 19, I became pregnant with my daughter. And it was a moment that I'll never forget. I remember where I was when I found out. And the first things that rushed through me were shame, because my parents had sacrificed, right? Had put in all this work for us, and now I'm a teenage mom. Like, how did I let this happen? There was a lot of fear around, like, is my life over? Am I gonna be able to do the things that I aspired to do? And a ton of uncertainty. But my family, who are the ride or die kind of people that they are, I called my mom hysterical, saying, I need to come home, I need to come home. And my whole family flew into town to be with me. And we all sat around the table, and they asked me this question, which is, how will this moment define you? Because you're gonna decide how this goes, and whatever you decide is right. So if you wanna walk back on campus and act like a victim, then people are gonna react to you like a victim. If you're gonna walk back on campus and act like a victor, then that's how people are gonna react to you. You decide how this is gonna go. And I think we're all coming out of this pandemic and COVID-19, and there's been so much trauma and tragedy that has happened to everybody. It is a shared experience that we've had. And this question is, how is this moment gonna define us, right? How is it gonna define you? What are you gonna do with this? And so I decided then that I was gonna live a life that my daughter would be proud of. I wasn't gonna put my dreams on hold. I'm gonna do all the things that were in my heart, and we're gonna see how this goes. And so the journey began. I moved home. At that time, my parents moved to South Bend, Indiana, which is where they met Tanya Bradford. Which is how I know Tanya, because she was present during that time. And if everybody knows Tanya, you do whatever she says. So she said, I need you here in Irvine. I said, I'm there, whatever you need. And I said, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? And I really was always interested in entertainment and media and culture. And Harpo Studios was 90 miles outside of South Bend. And so back in the day, before there was LinkedIn and Facebook and all of these things, I started calling the front desk, right? You had to find the white pages, and I was dialing their number, which I still remember is 312-633-1000, because I dialed it so many times. And I kept dialing, and nobody was answering. I kept getting sent to voicemail. Oprah was a very important person in our family. We would watch the Oprah show. All Black moms watch the Oprah show. And then they'd be like, let's talk about what happened on the Oprah show. And so my dad says to me, why don't you just drive up there? It's 90 miles away, like show up, like pull up on them, right? So I put on my little gray express suit, had put together essentially a bullshit resume because I had no experience, and drove my little Nissan Altima to Chicago. And I pulled up to the front gate. I said, I'm here to see somebody in HR. And they said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, I do not. They said, well, you can't just come in and wait with an appointment. And I said, well, there's HR in the building, right? And they said, yes. So I said, well, I'll just wait until somebody comes outside. So I sat in the lobby for 6 hours that day. And I just waited until somebody would see me. And that is like the bliss of being young, because you don't even know what you're doing. But even as I'm like older now and I hire people today and I have the power to do that, I'm always looking for the person who's willing to do the thing that everybody else isn't willing to do. And so this gentleman comes down. His name is Torrance. He's one of my good friends to this day. And he was like, okay, what do you want? And I said, well, I want a job here. You know, I think I'd be great. I learned really fast. I'm fun. And he said, have you graduated college? I said, no, I have not. He said, well, we only hire college graduates. I said, okay, well, what are you looking for in college graduates? And he gave me this list of things that were requirements: production experience, broadcast experience, all of these things. I said, okay, so if you're saying that if I go do these things, you'll hire me. He said, no, there's no, no, who is this girl? There's no guarantee that you'll get hired, but it's a higher probability that we would consider you. I said, okay, bet. Can I have your business card? Because that way now I have an email, okay? And I'm gonna be hitting you up on email, letting you know what I've been doing and up to. So for the next 2 years, I got an internship at ESPN Radio to get broadcasting experience. I was a general assignment reporter at WSBT, the local TV station in South Bend, to get production experience. I worked at Comcast for a summer. These were all unpaid internships, but it was the price that I knew was required, the sacrifice, to get where I wanted to be. And so every time that I had an experience, I would email Torrance and say, hey, here's an update. Got a job at ESPN, check that box, right? And so finally, I get a call from Harpo. They called me. And it's Torrance, and he says, okay, we're starting an internship program. It's paid, it's $10 an hour. And you have been harassing me for 2 years. So I feel like we should give you a shot. I said, I'll be there. So I drive back up to Chicago. I interview, and I was interviewing for the public relations team. And they said, have you graduated from college? And I said, yes. I hadn't, but we'll figure that out later. And I did the interview, and they're like, this is fantastic. Can you start Monday? I said, of course. So I am driving home like, I did it. And then I'm like, oh shoot, I have a semester of college left, 18 credits that I'm signed up for. So I called the dean of the business school, and I said, it's emergency. And I got him on the phone of Indiana University, and I said, look, this is what you guys prepare us for, to get jobs like this. I need you to work with me here. And he said, okay, well, what would you like to see happen? I was like, I can't come on campus. I start on Monday, but can I do independent study? Like, what could we do? And so he agreed that I could do independent study for my final semester. And he said, but I'm gonna give you extra work. And I said, that's fine, I don't mind. And so I started on Monday. And it was an incredible experience. My first day, I worked 14 hours, not because they asked me to, but because it was so exciting. Everything that was happening in that studio in Chicago just felt like it was like we're changing the world in this tiny, tiny studio of people. I can't believe I get to be a part of it. So my internship went on, and then towards the end they said, thank you so much, your internship's ending. And I said, I'm not leaving. Well, I don't know what y'all thought. I'm not going anywhere. It took me 2.5 years to get in here. Do you know how hard I hustled to get in here? And so I go home, and I'm talking to my parents about it. And my dad says, of course, my dad's the audacious one. He says, you should just go to Oprah. Exactly, what? That was exactly my response. I said, what? No. Interns are seen, not heard. No, I can't. And he says to me, what do you have to lose? Worst case scenario, you don't have a job. Best case scenario, you don't know what you might do. And I said, you know what? Those are good chances. That's a good point. And so I wrote a letter saying, thank you so much for this opportunity, blah, blah, blah. Will you please give me a job? I'm like 21 or 22 at this time, so it wasn't very eloquent. And on my last day of my internship, I go to her chief of staff, Libby Moore, whose desk sat right outside of her office, and I said, hey, I have a very important letter for Miss Winfrey that I need to make sure you get to her. She's like, well, what's in the letter? I said, I can't tell you, but I need you to promise me that she'll read it. And she says, hold on a second. And she goes into Oprah's office. She said, Miss Winfrey will see you. Oh. I wasn't ready. And so I said, oh God, here we go. And so I go into the office. And I don't know if you've ever seen her office on television or whatever, but it's just grand, and it's like beautiful black art, and it's photos of her with like Sidney Poitier and Maya Angelou, and it's just rich and luxe, and my little 22-year-old self is walking in, and I sit down, and she comes and sits next to me, and she says, Libby says you have something you want to say. And it's like my life flashed before my eyes, and I burst into tears. And I'm not even talking about the little like just small tears. I'm talking about full-on panic attack, can't breathe. And she starts rubbing my back, which makes it worse. Because now Oprah Winfrey is touching my back, right? And then I'm like making eye contact with her, and I can see that she's freaking out, which is like, makes me freak out. And I'm like, oh God, get it together. And she's like, just breathe. And I'm like, I'm sorry. So I finally get it together, and she says, okay, let's try this again. What do you want? And I said, I'm an intern here, and I have loved this experience, and they're telling me I have to go, and I've gone to HR and every single leader in the company, and there's no jobs available, and so can you make me a job? And she says, what? And I was like, yes, this is your company. You can do whatever you want. I could be your assistant. I could be one of the, I could do special projects. Maybe you could create a coordinator role in the marketing team. And she said, whoa. Have you talked to HR? I said, yes, I've talked to HR. And she's like, have you talked to your boss? I was like, yes, I've talked to Lisa Halliday. I've talked to everybody. And she says, maybe we just need to be grateful for this experience. And she turned me down. She said, if I just start to create a job for you, then anybody can walk in my door and demand that I do this and that, and there are processes in place. And so if there's nothing available, maybe we should just be grateful for this experience. And I was like, this is really disappointing. I thought this was gonna be the big, hero moment, and it wasn't. But I walked away feeling like, listen, I put it all on the line. I did everything I could. So I was like, it's on to the next thing. And so what happened was I started volunteering for the Obama campaign. This was in 2008, and I had met the campaign staff because Oprah was campaigning for President Obama at the time. And so through our communication, I said, I have some time on my hands. What can I do? And they said, volunteer in Indiana because it's a battleground state. And so I started working in the Democratic office downtown, and I was there every day because it was so exciting. Applied to grad school because that's what everybody, when you're young, you don't know what else to do. You're like, I'll just go back to school again. And they said, wow, you're really dedicated. Do you want to join the team officially? I said, yeah, that sounds great. And political campaigns, they don't pay anything, they pay pennies. So it really wasn't about the money, but it was about the access. Because when I was part of the team, I got to join the conference calls and see the emails and see what everybody was talking about. And every night, President Obama would do a call with his campaign team. And he would talk about what he was seeing on the road. He was making real-time adjustments. I remember a time when he was like, I really feel like we need to pivot our position on the economy to this, and I want to, for the next 5 days, go really hard here. And it was like the first campaign that was technical and social in manner where there was real-time changes happening on the fly. And at the end of each call, he would say this, have you done everything you can? Because in a political campaign is a lot like life, where there's a deadline, right? November 4th is the date, and you don't get that day back in a campaign. And so he would ask us every day, did you do everything you can? Did you register all the voters you could? Did you hit the points? Did you bring on one more volunteer? Because I don't want to get to November 4th and feel like we left anything on the table. And so that was something that I took with me. And so he gets elected Tuesday, November 4th, 2008, one of the best days of my life. And what I realized at that time was I'm so glad that Oprah said no, because then I had this experience. And I got to be a part of this history with this group of people and build this whole new network. And so you don't always know why things are happening to you, but they're always happening for you. And I knew in that moment, oh, that's why I wasn't supposed to be there. And so the Sunday before election, 60 Minutes had actually sent a crew. They were doing a campaign special, and there was a camera crew that was in our office that day. So I was on 60 Minutes the Sunday before election, and my phone was blowing up, oh, we see you, we see you, we see you, and I didn't think anything of it. On Wednesday, November 5th, they emailed everybody, and everybody who worked on the campaign got first dibs to White House jobs. So essentially, it's do you want to work in the transportation? Do you want to work in the First Lady's office? And you applied. And I had no desire to work in politics or move to DC or anything like that, and so I politely declined, and again, found myself without a job. And the next day, my phone rang, and it was Harpo Studios. And it was Torrance from HR who said, I saw you on 60 Minutes, and we have a job that just opened up that's part-time that I think you would be great for, and you don't even have to apply. And so I went back to Harpo, and I was there for the next 10 years of my career. And I started, like I said, as an intern, and when I came back, I was a coordinator, and I went from coordinator to VP in less than 5 years, one of the youngest VPs in Hollywood. And I never knew if Oprah remembered that moment, but she did. And this is a photo we were in the basement of a producer's house, and this is me teaching Oprah Winfrey how to tweet. And I was on the marketing team and the publicity team and was trying to get her on social media. And I can't remember what the question was. Oh, somebody said, Maya, when did you know that you wanted to work at Harpo? And she just cracks up laughing. And I was like, what are you laughing at? And she was like, oh, I remember. I said, you remember? Oh, she was like, oh, I remember. Your panic attack, couldn't breathe, had the audacity to ask me for a job. But I left an impression on her, and she always kept me close on her team. And so I became part of the leadership team. And towards the end of my time there, we were in Maui, and this is in Oprah's backyard. And we were on a hike. And yes, her backyard is that big where you can hike. We went on a 5-mile hike in her backyard. And she, the leadership, it was like a leadership retreat and conference. And if you look closely, you can see her in the distance. She's in the brown. And we're hiking, and everybody else was like, everybody, when you get in front of Oprah, people like to show off, so they're hiking all fast. And I'm just like taking my time in the back, right, with my little hiking stick. And she was behind me, and she said, Maya, let's go this way. So everybody else was going this way, and she said, let's go this way. So we're hiking, and it's just a couple of us, and we get to the top of her mountain in Maui, looking over the water, and it's just like, wow, life is beautiful. And she stops, and she puts her arm around me, and she says, I am a Black girl from the dirt roads of Kosciuszko, Mississippi. If I can do this, you can do this. Are you dreaming big enough? And that was the next question. And it made me think, like, what is the difference between her and I? She just may have more faith than I do, or a bigger belief that things are possible. And, when we look at people that we admire and we look at them from a distance, it's important to know that we're all really the same. We're all uniquely wired and created for such a time as this. And it's just a difference of, do you believe and are you dreaming big enough? And so I left Oprah and I went to go work at Netflix. They reached out to me, and I heard Lance say right before on the panel that, a really important thing is to show up and be gracious and intentional with everybody you meet, because you never know how that connection can manifest. And when Netflix reached out to me, they said, this woman, Monica Austin, recommended you. And I said, who's Monica? I don't know Monica. Do I know Monica? I don't know a Monica. And so I looked her up on LinkedIn and realized that I had met Monica Austin one time, 5 years ago, in a meeting. She worked at Facebook, and she came to the OWN offices. And I remember her, and I remember that we had a connection, and we just vibed. And she then left Facebook and went to Netflix and happened to be in a meeting with HR who said, we're looking for somebody to come lead US marketing. She said, there's a woman from Oprah that I remember. Maybe we should reach out to her. And that is how that connection happened. And I came to Netflix, and the Netflix culture is a very dynamic culture. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. It's an incredible way of working and code of conduct. And one of the things that they do is in your first 90 days, they say, don't work at all, just onboard. Meet as many people as possible, read all the documents, set up the one-on-ones, just have conversations, and then figure out what you want to do. Don't jump into the work. And so the Black employee group told me, you have to meet this guy named Steve Johnson. He's the head of design at Netflix, and Steve is a legend in his own right. He was the head of design at Adobe, the head of design for LinkedIn, and he's responsible for what the Netflix interface looks like. And I said, okay, I'm gonna fly up to Los Gatos, which was the technical headquarters, and I'm in a meeting with Steve Johnson, and he's just like cool, zany, cool guy, and Black man, and I'm explaining to him, we're just having like small talk, and he says, so what are you here to do? And I was like, well, I was hired to lead marketing in the US, and he said, no. What are you here to do? What's your fingerprint gonna be on this company? You need to think about that now, because there's a difference between having a job and having a mission. Do you know what you're here to do? And that was the next question where I was like, no, I don't know what I'm here to do. Let me think about it. And what I decided in that moment was, one of the lessons I had taken from working with Oprah was that use your platform. Everybody has a platform, and how are you going to use your platform to move society and culture forward? And in particular, images are political. And the more people see themselves reflected in television, and on screen, the more they believe is possible for themselves. And so here I am at the leading purveyor of images on earth. Netflix is the leading purveyor of images on earth. And I said, I'm gonna make it my mission to make sure that our stories get told. And so I started this vertical called Strong Black Lead. You're like, oh, Strong Black. That makes me so happy when people recognize it. And there was an insight that we had that Netflix had more Black talent and more Black shows than any other entertainment provider in the world, but Black audiences didn't know that. So we created this campaign called Great Day in Hollywood, where we brought together all of the Black talent, from Spike Lee to Ava DuVernay to Caleb from Stranger Things to the On My Block kids. And we recreated this photo, which is an iconic photo called Great Day in Harlem, which was, from all the jazz musicians. And the beautiful thing about that original photo is that it was the intersection of people you knew in jazz and the up-and-comers in jazz. And that's really what Netflix represented, which was, you're gonna see people you know, like Spike and all these other people, then you're gonna see a whole new generation of talent that Netflix is bringing up. And this was the most successful brand campaign in the history of Netflix. It is being turned into a Harvard business case study. And Strong Black Lead is essentially a media outlet that is run through Netflix that now everybody in the industry knows. And it not only did a great job of us telling the story of all of the Black stories that were on Netflix, but it became a huge magnet for Black talent. So people saw how we were investing in this and wanted to bring their projects to Netflix. And so I'm super proud of that moment. And then after 5 years of doing that, it was time to come to Clubhouse. Like Dean said, Clubhouse is a social audio app. It's a social network based on voice. It's the fastest growing startup in the history of tech. I don't know how I got into this seat, but I am in this seat. I am the head of global marketing there. I can count on less than one hand how many Black women get to sit in C-level positions in the tech industry. And so I was talking to this candidate as I was starting to hire. And one of the things that we were trying to do was scale the business. I was employee number 14. We are now over 150 people. I've been there for about 18 months. And I was interviewing a candidate. His name was Carl. Never forget Carl. And we were trying to close him. And I said, Carl, what is it going to take for us to get you to say yes? And he said this. He said, I don't know that this is the problem that I want to solve. I had never heard it articulated in this way, where he says, I just had a kid, and if I'm going to be away from my family, I have to feel like I'm solving the problem that I was born to solve. And he said, how did you know that this is the problem you wanted to solve? I said, Carl, I have never asked myself that question. And it's now the question that I'm asking myself all the time. What problem is Clubhouse gonna solve? What problems am I gonna solve with the power that I have in this seat? And I think it's really interesting as some of you start your careers to think about, what problems do you wanna solve? Because we don't have very much time. This is where I am on the life map. Scary, but I'm super proud of everything that I've done up until this moment. And I'm really proud of the courage that I've had to just take leaps and do things that are uncomfortable. And the things that have always led me are questions, great questions, because a lot of people are gonna give you advice. A lot of people are gonna tell you how to do certain things, but it's really important to get clear on your own wisdom and what's in your heart and what do you wanna do. And the only way you can do that is to ask yourselves really powerful questions. And so this is the 4,000 weeks. It's just a reminder. I'm just gonna take out your phones and do the math equation. Do it on your own time. But my favorite question is from a poet, Mary Oliver. It's from the poem, I think it's called Summer Geese. And she says, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So thank you.
Are you okay taking a picture?
Yeah.
So that was too good to let her get off the stage. So we're gonna, we got a few minutes. She's kind enough, she'll take a few questions. Do we have any questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. That
Yes.
was so inspiring, especially those questions. First of all, your story.
Yeah.
Your story is just so phenomenal. I find it very important for us as African Americans to curate and tell our own story. The questions that you raised really brought me back to personal branding and creating and curating that. So could you elaborate a little bit more on those questions and how they impact you on your day-to-day?
Like personal brand. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like I usually go roundabout when I answer questions, so forgive me. But when I think about time, I'm really like focused on this time thing. Because when you actually multiply that by hours, you have 650,000 hours in your lifetime. You should imagine that you're asleep for a third of that. So it's really 448,000 hours that you are awake. And so if you look at that on a day-to-day basis, you have 16 hours every day, right? And so the best way to know what kind of life you have is to just look at how you spend your time. And the average person doesn't like their job, which you spend more than 50% of your time at. For millennials, we're spending over 4 hours on social media comparing ourselves to other people's highlight reels, looking for the validation from strangers. And so when you add that up, it's like, that's only a couple hours a day. We haven't even talked about if you're married, if you have kids, right? And all the things that come with that. And so when I think about my own personal brand, I just want to live a life and reflect a life in public that is true to who I am and not what I think people should see, because I know that social media has really ruined us a little bit in that way. And I'm talking and I work at a social network. And so, but I think it's really important to think about what you're curating for people. And so if you land on my profiles or anything like that, I'm only gonna usually show you moments in my life that I'm really proud of, show you things that are hard, or like try to hit you with some inspiration, you know what I mean? And as I step into this job, this Clubhouse job, I've always really been more behind the scenes, and this is the first job where I feel like I'm in public, which has been really uncomfortable for me because I like being behind the scenes. But I'm just really intentional about where we show up, where I show up, and what I want to say. And so that was a lesson that we learned very early from the Oprah days. Like, I feel so fortunate that that was my first work experience because I was there for a decade. I grew up there in my 20s, and she would say, starting every meeting, what's your intention? And just let's get clear on the intention. If you don't have a clear intention, then don't waste my time, right? And so I'm always thinking about that. What's our intention? What's your intention? What's my intention here? And I think when you come from a place of intention, then it feels more authentic. Yeah, go ahead.
First, I want to be very selfish for a moment, so apologies here. I want to say, I have a daughter that's 25 years old, and today, with all of the panelists and the conversation,
Yeah.
you've equipped me to be a much more resourceful dad than
Oh.
her in whether.
Oh.
I think they could have found different panelists, they could have found different speakers, different subjects, but in this point in time, right now, this could not have been anything.
Oh.
This is perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Yes. Oh, good. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm going to echo the previous questioner's sentiments. What you just gave us was a TED Talk, and I'm really proud of that.
Oh, thank you.
Question is, for those of us who aren't extrovert like yourself,
Yes.
and who don't necessarily always know what it is they want to do or where they want to go, like you did, even when you didn't,
Yes.
how
Yeah.
without those gifts?
Well, that's a really good question. And I never know where I'm going. So people always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always say more of myself. I don't aspire to a certain role. I don't aspire to a certain amount of money. Like, money's good, but that's just not how I've ever lived my life. And I think it's helpful because it just means everything's possible. And one of the things that I sometimes, like, people who I mentor, people that work for me, is just ask yourself the question, and this is again thinking about your mortality, which is, when all is said and done and you're no longer here, what would you want people to say about you? It's the one time where I feel like it's okay to worry about what people think. And to imagine yourself at your funeral today, who's there? They're getting up one by one. What are they saying about who you were, how you lived, how you made them feel? What were your contributions? And it's just a good place to start, to then write down something and then look at your life and say, am I on that path? And I think that so many times we feel like we have to control the outcomes, and we're not responsible for outcomes. That is God's responsibility. We're responsible for the input. Like, what are you inputting, you know? And I've just always found that that's worked out when I didn't know. Yeah.
We'll take one more.
Yes.
Quick question, Rockaway. My family's from Chicago.
Okay, Chicago, what side? South side.
They always said be the exception to the rule. That's kind of the deal amongst my brothers and sisters. I want you to unpack your victim versus victor portion. I don't know if that was something that your family instilled in you.
Yeah.
What type of fortitude do you have to kind of always be the victor versus the victim?
When I was 19, my faith wasn't as strong as it is today. So I really, my pastor talks about there's 3 types of faith, and one of them is surrogate faith, which is people believing on your behalf when you don't. And I think that probably where that came from is from the prayers of like my grandmother and my parents and things like that. And them saying to me, you're gonna teach people how to treat you. And so you decide, you know, what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. And I think that it was more of like an energy than things that I would say. You know, I remember coming back on campus and I was just like, I'm gonna have my belly out, be walking, doing my thing, even though I wasn't fully confident yet. It was like the fake it till you make it thing. And that's what it took back then. Now I know where I come from, you know what I mean? And I know whose I am. And so I really believe that like nothing can stop me, nobody can stop me. And what you think about me is none of my business. It's none of my business, you know what I mean? So, and I really try to walk with that, and I'm not perfect by any means, you know what I mean? I have down days, I have days when I can't get out of bed, or, you know, you're just like, this is hard, like life is hard. And my dad always said that to me, life is hard. Being homeless is hard, having money is hard. Having a job is hard, trying to get a job is hard. Being married is hard, being single is hard. It's all hard, so just choose which hard you want. You know, and I was like, that is good advice. He should really be the one doing the TED Talk, because he gave so much good advice. And so I think that's where my fortitude comes from. And I think as you do it more and more and more, it just becomes a part of who you are. Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor Watson, what can you say? Thank you so much. That's phenomenal. We could not end the day on a better note. I really appreciate it.